We are going live now.
Okay.
In a moment. Namaste and very good morning on behalf of Sahitya Academy and the Foundation of SARC Writers and Literature, that is FOSWAL. We are about to begin our inaugural session of the online literary conference on environment and literature with the participation BIMSTEC countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. And in the inaugural session, we have the literary dignitaries with us. Firstly, Ajit Kaurma, President, FOSWAL, then Dr. K. Srinivas Rao-ji, Secretary, Sahitya Academy. I hope President Sahitya Academy, Dr. Chandrasekhar Kambarji will join us soon. Then for Keynote Address, Ashish Nandiji, eminent scholar and sociologist. And the participants, dignitaries, we have Suresh Goyal-ji, KJ Alfonso-ji, Manzarul Islam-ji from Bangladesh, Kunzang Shoden from Bhutan, Kanchana Priyakantha-ji from Sri Lanka, Bodhacharan-ji from Thailand, and Akhtarul Wasi from India. Hopefully, Gauhar Rizvi-ji and Akhtarul Wasi Sahab will join us soon. And we also have with us, thankfully, Dr. Madhav Kaushik-ji, Vice President, Sahitya Academy. Very warm morning and namaste to all. Initially, I invite Dr. K. Srinivas Rao-ji, Secretary Sahitya Academy, for delivering the welcome address of this inaugural session. Dr. K. Srinivas Rao-ji.
Thank you, Krishna, and namaskar, and good morning to all of you. Respected Professor Chandrasekhar Kambarji, President Sahitya Academy, who will join soon. Respected Dr. Ashish Nandiji, eminent scholar, social theorist, psychologist, and writer. Respected Madam Ajit Kaurji, President, Foundation of SARC Writers and Literature, FOSWAL. All the participants of this program and friends. I'm glad to welcome all of you for this online literature conference on environment and literature. Friends, cleanliness means good health. Not only personal cleanliness, environment, the atmosphere in. If our surroundings are clear, better our lives will be. There is one fundamental step towards this: awareness of our surroundings, Mother Nature, the atmosphere in which we are living. It is here that literature plays a vital role. Not that words, language, and literature are the only tools at the disposal of human beings. As a popular saying goes, a photo tells 1,000 stories. But literature is much deeper than a painting or photo, and its role is much more varied than them. Literature, the language, not only enhances the awareness of the environment, but also has the capacity to instruct us, inform us on the ways of living with nature in the past, thereby providing us more options to enhance our awareness of the environment, nature, and atmosphere. A photo or a painting cannot do that. It can, at the most, reveal the mind of its creator. Everything else would turn out to be logical extensions or interpretations. I'm not referring to mere depictions or portrayals of nature and environment in various languages, but literary creations showcasing how communities and societies treated environment, what was the level of their effort in the preservation of atmospheric and environmental purity, etc. Again, the reference is not only to the contemporary writings, the period in which awareness about this appear to be very high due to the digital platforms or only to the literature of India. In Indian literature, when one reads Valmiki's Ramayana or Vyasa's Mahabharata or Kalidasa's works or even the works of great writers of early 20th century, such portrayals are plenty. Such portrayals are not limited to Sanskrit or one or two languages, but in every language can one see such literary representations. We a great Benign king of Sangam period, Vel Pari, how acute his sensitivity towards nature. He could not stand the sight of a jasmine creeper sagging, and he gave his own gold-laden chariot as support to the tree. That was one fine example. From Vyasa to Valmiki to Kalidasa, we come across remarkable observances of nature about trees, plants, rivers, mountains, rains, sunlight, lightning, and much more. Not that these great poets and writers researched and wrote about all this, they just observed their environment, had care to look after it, and express them in words. Similar depictions like that of literature of India can be found in the medieval literature of countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Nepal. I'm very glad that these countries are participating along with Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Bhutan in this conference. These literary portrayals are continued ones, though through time and in several genres such as poetry, plays, stories, novels, and criticism. The complex relationship between human beings and environment has been captured and portrayed very well in all the above genres in the literatures of these countries, even though objective and goal of each creation look different. In this conference, one can watch readings in various languages of these countries along with the representations of various dimensions of relationship between human beings and environment, such as women, environment and literature, photography, and cinema and literature as tools for the environment sensitization, environment and farmers, and environment in folklore, etc. For the want of time and for the brevity's sake, I just read out few topics, and in this conference, one can find more. I will fail in my duty if I do not congratulate from the bottom of my heart Madam Srimati Ajit Kaurji and her wonderful team at Foswal for organizing this literary conference year after year, irrespective of the hardships that they face in doing so. It takes enormous vision, courage, and intelligence to do this, not only once, but continuously. And despite her advanced age, respected Madam Ajit ji has been carrying on, and she is an inspiration to all of us. I join everyone in thanking Srimati Ajit Kaurji for this wonderful literary service. With these few words, I'm glad to welcome all of you once again. Thank you all.
Many thanks, sir, for your address. As you rightly pointed out, Ajit ma'am has been a great inspiration for all of us. I invite Ajit ma'am now to deliver presidential address.
Literature conferences and festivals for the last more than 3 decades. The creative effort to bring writers and intellectuals of the South countries together to raise a valuable voice for peace in the region was launched by me in 1987. Later, in 1999, the Ministry of External Affairs started collaborating with us only a few times, though, and our conferences and festivals became huge mega events, both in India and in all the South countries. But since we cannot invite Pakistani writers now because of government policy, and Afghanistani writers find it difficult to travel and participate, the Ministry of External Affairs, without giving us a penny though, advised us to replace these two countries with Thailand and Myanmar. This new combination is called BIMSTEC. That is why we are calling this conference of ours BIMSTEC Literature Conference on Environment and Literature. Besides Thailand and Myanmar, all the other countries are our old friends. Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and of course India. After this brief introduction, I would like to share with you my pain and anguish for the suffering people of Ukraine who are living under the shadow of bombs. Old people and children fleeing their beautiful country and their cozy homes to alien lands to save their lives. All the young men are fighting to save their land, their country, their dignity. A battle seen nowhere else in the world, excepting only in Panjshir in Afghanistan last year. Lakhs of people dying in the destruction of residential buildings in Ukraine make me cry. I cannot eat because my brothers, grandmothers, sisters, and children are without food in Ukraine. In Afghanistan, situation is the same as was last year. All our writer friends are scattered all over the world. Those who are still in Afghanistan are living under the shadow of fear. Our Afghanistani friend Najib Manalai, a great scholar and writer who has taken refuge in Paris, has written to me only yesterday that all girls' schools are closed in Afghanistan. All the girls are forced to stay at home in a veil. A little Afghani girl has written a soul-searing poem which Najib Manalai has translated for me. Let me quote from the poem. They have shut our school doors. They have scattered heaven's clear path with hell flames. But I will not allow to once again be lost in the scarring delusion of ignorance or coercion. I salute all the brave people of Ukraine and Afghanistan and assure them of our solidarity with them. Let us come back to our conference. I take the proud privilege of welcoming our chief guest, Professor Chandrasekhar Kambar, eminent writer and president of Science Academy, Dr. K.S. Rao, the scholar who is the secretary of Science Academy, keynote speaker, Professor Ashish Nandi, eminent sociologist, and our guests of honor, our honored scholars from India and from the neighboring countries will speak on the contemporary literary scenario in their countries and on environment concerns in their countries. Dr. Tara Gandhi Bhattacharya, eminent writer and granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi, Ambassador Dr. Suresh K. Goyal, eminent diplomat and former Director General of ICCR, Honorable Mr. K.J. Alfonso, Member of Parliament, Dr. Gohar Rizvi, Advisor to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Professor Manzoorul Islam, eminent Bangladeshi writer, Dr. Kundan Jordan Roda, the senior most writer of Bhutan, Professor Akhtar Wase, eminent scholar of Islamic studies, Professor Abi Zwedi, eminent poet and theatre person of Nepal, Miss Kanchana Priyanka, an eminent writer and publisher of Sri Lanka, Dr. Madhav Kaushik, the Vice President of Sahitya Academy, who has written 30 novels, and Dr. Anand Kumar, poet, novelist, and the director of our literary conferences. Environment and climate change are two of the primary concerns of the citizens of BIMSTEC countries who are aware of the precarious life on this planet. Man and his environment are porous entities. Environment and climate change have become immediate danger to the planet. In our region, besides sharing our clouds and monsoons, our birds and animals, our oceans and rivers, our flora and fauna, we also share long civilizational journeys horizontally waters are being placed in nooses. The race for industrialization is eating into our fertile lands and forests. Peaceful tribal villages have become places of long struggles for survival. Mindless mining all over our countries is ruining our fertile lands, slaughtering and butchering of trees, our ancient forests, pushing out huge numbers of tribal population which have been living there from times immemorial. Forests are not only their homes, but also provide them their survival. Slaughtered trees are also home to innumerable species of birds, most of them rare, which are being exiled and pushed to extinction. Let me share with you our long struggle when I and my daughter Arpana, a handful of like-minded people, fought a case in the Supreme Court against the authorities, which are butchering several acres of a South Delhi protected forest for Commonwealth Games. A forest of 8,900 trees, which was home to thousands of peacocks, rare eagles, and lakhs of little sparrows, miners, bulbuls. The whole forest used to quiver with the early morning symphonies, which no Mozart can ever copy. We saw dazed peacocks being eaten by stray dogs. Apna pulled a couple of them from the jaws of wild dogs and rushed them to the Birds Hospital in Old Delhi. We won the case after 8 long years, and the Supreme Court ordered replanting of 2,900 trees in the same spot, which was a first-time success in favor of trees in the history of Delhi. The court normally rules for replanting of trees 20 kilometers away, and these do not benefit the environment of that area. And a few other such cases were fought too, as the land mafia here is too influential. The whole cosmos was created in a very subtle but very fragile balance. If man cannot disrupt the orbits of sun, earth, moon, stars, galaxies, because they are too far away, should he pounce upon and destroy whatever is closer at hand? Who has given him the right to destroy what he did not create and can in no way replace after destroying it? disturbing the subtle balance of Earth, which is the home of all living species. Why are we not conscious of the fact that without the bees and butterflies who marry all the fruits and crops and vegetation by carrying the pollen from one to the other, all the greenery will disappear. If industrial gas emissions are causing danger to ozone layer, let us also articulate the danger to our village ponds, wells, pokers, and bollies, which are drying up, and the water level, which is going deeper down so fast. Our women walk for tens of miles every day in search of water. So many water bodies in cities like Delhi are gone. Do we talk about the chemical waste which affluent countries bring in the ugly ships and offload in our oceans near our coasts? Why don't we remember that poor little penguin shivering with panic, soaked in oil, could neither fly nor walk a step, sitting bewildered and paralyzed on the shore of a forsaken ocean, because a whole oil tanker had spilled its millions of tons of oil in the sparkling waters of the ocean. All of us saw the penguin on our television screen. Can we raise our own BIMSTEC specific voice in international environment forum to save the planet from extinction? The planet Earth was created as a place of humans and animals, of Earth surrounded by vast oceans, of multifarious and multi-hued living species on the earth and in the water, birds and animals and fish, little blades of grass and huge trees, bees and butterflies and insects, little ants and snakes.
Excuse me, Ajit Ma, could you come closer to the camera so that you will be more audible? Your voice is still low, a little low.
A beautiful world without
Fine now.
boundaries and borders. Why don't we, the BIMSTEC countries, with a single strong voice, stand up and be counted? It is high time that we talk about our own problems related to our environment degradation, butchering of our forests, neglect of our beautiful sea coast, mindless expansion of our industrial industries on our cultivable land, melting of our glaciers, our oceans sighing with anguish called tsunamis, dying of our water bodies affecting not only human life, but also the lives of birds and animals and fish. We are here to articulate our common concerns over the next 3 days. And of course, we will present our stories and poems too. I wish we were here together physically and hug each other, hoping that Corona will vanish by November. We will meet here in Delhi physically on 6th, 7th, and 8th November. Let us keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ajit Ma, for your words. And I'm really sorry that I intervened because it was necessary. You were not much audible until then. I'm really sorry. But fine, thanks for your address. As Professor Dr. Chandrasekhar Kambaji is yet to join us, may I now invite humbly Ashish Nandiji, eminent scholar, for delivering the keynote address. Ashishji, please unmute first yourself.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. I feel honored that I have been seated here to speak to fellow thinkers, fellow social scientists, and natural scientists, amongst others. Also, activists of various kinds, I'm sure, are listening or tuning in to this session of our program. I would like to be as unpleasant as I can on this inaugural session by telling you the problems which we face today whenever we talk of environment and environmentalism and its future. The first problem, I think, is this, that environment has not been adequately politicized. It is politicized. This might sound very strange because in many countries, people are sick and tired of politics. Everything is goes into politics. India, for example, that's the problem. But I would suggest that for some reason, environmental issues have not come within politics. And in a democracy, if you cannot put it on the table through politics, it is unlikely that environmental issues will have salience or serious support for any parties, large, small, good, bad. Nor is environmentalism related to the issue of welfare of certain groups which we talk about all the while. For example, one of our former prime ministers declared in Stockholm in an environmental conference that poverty is the worst pollutant. Now, this may be true in some small pockets, somewhere in the whole of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. But we all know the different levels of consumption of social resources by different sectors. For example, an ordinary American citizen, average American citizen, consumes during his life something like 35 times what an ordinary average Indian consumes. Now, this figure, when you put it in the stark terms, immediately tells you who is likely to be the greater pollutant. And yet, it is very difficult to convince the developing countries that these are issues that has to be discussed, and the initiative must come from the great pollutants. But that is not politically acceptable because they also have to face their electorate and so on and so forth in many cases. And many cases you have leaders who do not believe in environmentalism, who think it is a hoax. It's a hoax promoted by a few irresponsible individuals or NGOs. And that's like Mr. Trump, president, dismissed all environmental concerns from his attention. Clear, absolutely. So this is the problem which we have to face and confront. How to politicize the issue and bring it on the democratic, within the democratic process and make it an electoral issue systematically and self-consciously. Just propaganda on the basis of certain cultural factors or certain accusations, cross-accusations of corruption and irresponsibility of other kinds will not help in this kind of effort. Indeed, environmentalism indirectly enters politics by being one of the rich source. For example, some of the, can give an example, the building large dam systems, massive dam systems, gives you enough money, and the budget is large enough for you to siphon off some amount of money for your electoral funds or your party system and so on and so forth. And this is a ongoing process. I do not know how to handle that, but politicians should at least have the sensibility to take this into account. Yeah. I will give you some examples of this. It will become obvious to you what I am meant to say. When I was very young, in my teens, actually in my school, not in college, but school, we were taken as a group to see the DVC, Damodar Valley Corporation in Bihar. Good example of what I'm going to say. You will find that let me first tell this story. We were thrilled by seeing what we saw, because it was sold to us, in Nehru's words, as temples of India. So we went and waited with breath with what the DVC will deliver. The studies of scientists of the possible siltation rate of the rivers being dammed varied little bit, but not much. And mostly they were very low. Some went as low as 2 or 3%. So it was safe to build these dams and expect that they will last for at least a century or two. And they were supposed to build 8 dams under the DVC. It transpired when the first 4 came up that the siltation rate was many times higher than that. Some of them were more than 100%. That means every year the siltation doubles itself. And it was obvious that none of these dams will deliver what they will have to do. Fortunately, they decided not to build the other 4 dams. But we are stuck with this dam. We are stuck these 4 dams. And my suspicion is this, from the way it is discussed, that the cost of maintenance of these dams today is higher than the welfare they deliver. That's one part of the story. I'm not taking into account the other part of the story, that it displaced hundreds of thousands of people, mostly tribals. First, they were not even given any reparation for their displacement. They were taken to another place and said that you are free to stay here. That's all. They had to build their own homes, home houses, and so on and so forth. Only when the news reached the UN and the, I think the monetary fund, I suppose. I'm not very clear. My memory is there was a discussion, and they insisted, World Bank, UN and World Bank. World Bank insisted that you must pay them some. they were at first paid only 500 rupees per for doing this. It is known now that the displacement for dams and development in India is more than 6 billion. Sorry, 6 million. 6 million. And in other words, it is more than 3 times the total displacement due to the violence associated with the partitioning of British India into 3 countries, at that time 2 countries. That bloodbath also did not consume that much displacement. Displacement by developmental programs, mainly dams. And the targets were invariably the tribals, mostly tribals, I should say only. So this is what I mean by saying that it has to be not depoliticized, as it has been stands depoliticized. In fact, NGOs will go into the politics are discouraged. And the scientists who go into the subject are also told to shut their mouth. But unnecessarily, I think it should be politicized openly, and the results will probably be a greater awareness of these environmental issues. Secondly, I do notice a deep fear of the future and of many of the countries which are represented even in the participants of this conference. Because future of the globe, or if you like to make it more specific, environmental future of the globe, it always turns out to be negative. They would rather want the short-term futures with the economist project of development and its goals. But there is no effort to truly assess what each developmental input will do in terms of long-term effects. There are some results now, some indications of some of that now, but it is also very not easy to do this. Two examples. In United States, the Hoover Dam was actually celebrated as an example for the experience of South Asia. It was seen as a major achievement of United States. Now, the environmentalists have discredited Hoover Dam, and they have no ways, they found no way of how to dismantle it, because dismantling a dam is not a simple affair. There are 3 or 4 books which have suggested some direct and indirect ways of dismantling it, but none of them seem very feasible or seem very practical. It's very unlikely that they will live technical. Likewise, to give you a data nearer home, the floods in Bihar previously never went before more than 8 to 9% usually, but sometimes rarely crossed 11-12% of the state of Bihar. Now it covers 30% of Bihar. The data is old, so you should take into account Bihar and Jharkhand together. Now it is probably more. And you can do nothing with this stuff. They also promised hydroelectric power from it. And no power could be generated with that. The scientists has calculated wrongly. So now, to save face, they have built a standard coal power, fossil fuel powered electricity generating plant in that area. That's so there are these parts of the story. And Bihar is now stuck with the 30% effect of the dams. And along with environmental changes, it is going to be more acute, the situation of floods. So there is this part of the story too. We need greater assessment of the great developmental projects we take a lot of pride in. Yes, the countries from which we come have much lesser development than United States or many other societies in North Europe. Nonetheless, we have to also politicizing it also will give it certain salience to the kind of demand we require for this we can make on this so-called advanced countries. Because as far as environmentalism goes, they are not more advanced than us. They are basically more. These solutions like electrifying cars. I mean, as long as you have individual owned cars, have to be built, their factories have to be done, so forth. So it will be what we gain in one respect, in other respects. There has to be some degree of curtailment of the developmental goal, the development growth of the more advanced and more richer societies. I will also like to, I'm saying this because this fear of future I'm saying, talking is also because the negative fear of future scenarios, we are very uncomfortable about. And particularly no government wants to release it in our countries because that shows that what they are doing is not that relevant. But I'm afraid that unpleasant future is inescapable if you close your eyes to it. It is like the practice of ostriches during storms to bury their head in the sand. Yeah. Let me give a more recent example. You will get what I mean. There are at least 10 times more interest in the, I would say, lost river, Saraswati, which at one time was a magnificent river, and there was a civilization on both banks of it. It died out. At that time, there was no environmental consciousness, and those great cities are on its banks, but ensured its death, I guess. To some extent, at least contributed to it. But anyway, it may not be anybody's fault because they were not aware of its limit. But not a tear has been shed when river Sabarmati died in very recent times. Sabarmati is no longer a river. Every 2 or 3 weeks, when it begins to smell, they release the water and put in new water on the dam, on Sabarmati, and then wait till it will also begin. Sabarmati is a controlled tank or controlled lake, you can call it that. It is, as a river, it is dead. I must say that it hurts me a lot because Sabarmati was the river on which, the bank of which also a civilization had grown. And one of the finest products of the civilization, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, had his ashram. That ashram also they are trying to now thinking of developing, I am told. What development they will do on there? How can an ashram be developed? I have never understood. And left as ashram. And what it is, it should be museumized at least if you want to museum. Anyway, I don't want to go into that part of the story, but I'm inviting you to guess why the death of Sabarmati, because of the dam system built perhaps on Narmada, has attracted so little attention, whereas the part mythical history of Saraswati has attracted so much of attention and intellectual fervor. Finally, I want to make an appeal to our scientists. Our scientists have unfortunately not shown much interest in being transparent in their work, and they have not insisted that some of their findings of rivers are not kept secret by law. And this is not the case only in India, it is the case also in many other countries. We are afraid that if we release the data, it will lead to international conflict. In some places, you will it will involve the loss of the share of some participants in that project, of the river, of the river water, and so on and so forth. They don't want to stir conflicts within countries or between countries. I think this can be handled to some extent by scientists insisting that the rivers, at least in the non-controversial case, the river water data. I mean, it is not difficult for anybody else to find out actually what are the water. They cannot probably write in newspapers. But whenever I have needed data on any particular river, on any particular dam, what is the depth, Ganges near Farakka or something, because somebody or other is always willing to go down water personally and come up and give you the data as a gesture, or even sometimes at the cost of small amount of reward. If it is the collective effort of the villagers or something like that. But you always get the data. So it is pointless to hide them and think that people do not know. The Ganges in many controversial parts, has a depth of only 17 feet, where originally, when it was measured, it had a depth of something like 35 feet. We know this. I'm saying this here straight away. And I may be challenged, maybe, but this is some people who live there. And this is not only in India. I see this kind of attempt to hide is a very typical characteristic of certain regimes with which we have to make peace and we have to live with. I would request you that this be one of the major concerns of scientists, at least, that for scientific work at least, the data be released to them. If you are afraid of releasing it to the public because of the political consequences of it, you can release it to those who can take a measure and discourage projects which we know before they are built that they will not succeed. The Narmada Sagar project will not, frankly speaking, deliver. And this projection was made on journal after journal and by person after person who were deeply interested in it, and because it was supposed to give water to northern Gujarat, and it has not. But everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. So this is a world in which we are living, and this is the world which we have to negotiate. So when I started by saying that I will try to be unpleasant today, I am being, in some ways, being pleasant to the millions who pay the cost of such ignorance and such secrecy and such a kind of distorted knowledge system. Thank you very much for your patience.
Hearty thanks, Ashish sir, for your brilliant insights and very thoughtful address. Thanks a lot. As Professor Kambarji, President Sahitya Akademi, is yet to join us, may I request Dr. Madhav Kaushikji, Vice President Sahitya Akademi, to please share his views on this occasion.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are. Yeah.
नमस्कार, अजीत कौर जी, आशीष नंदी जी, सभी डिग्निटरीज, राव साहब, कंबार साहब शायद कुछ देर में। सबसे पहले तो मैं अजीत कौर जी और उनकी पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि उन्होंने इतने महत्वपूर्ण विषय पे अपनी ये इस वर्ष की आयोजन का एक बड़ा थीम बनाया। नंदी साहब ने जो हमारे सामने तस्वीर पेश की है वो सच में हमें जगाने वाली है, चौंकाने वाली तो है ही है, जगाने वाली भी। जहां तक साहित्य और वातावरण का, पर्यावरण का संबंध है, हमारे लेखकों ने हमेशा शुरू से लेके अब तक, जैसे राव साहब ने बताया कि पूरा वैदिक साहित्य इसी बात पे निर्भर करता है कि हमारा यूनिवर्स प्रकृति और पुरुष दोनों को मिला के बना हुआ। प्रकृति और पुरुष के इस मेल से पूरी दुनिया बनी है और उसी मेल से चल रही है। हमारी संस्कृति में प्रकृति की हर चीज की पूजा होती है, पेड़ों से लेके, नदियों से लेके, और कण कण में हमने ये माना है कि देयर इज डिविनिटी इन एवरी एस्पेक्ट ऑफ नेचर। लेकिन ये एक बहुत बड़ा कंट्राडिक्शन भी है कि जो पूरी संसार में कण कण में ईश्वर को मानते थे, प्रकृति की पूजा करते थे, उन्हीं लोगों ने प्रकृति का सबसे ज्यादा विनाश भी किया। ये एक बड़ा अंतर्विरोध है जो हमें जगाने का काम करता है। हमारे साहित्यकारों ने, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं कि वैज्ञानिकों के अपने तर्क हैं। वैज्ञानिक सिर्फ विकास की बात करता है, वो उसके साथ जुड़े हुए विनाश को नहीं देखता है। लेकिन साहित्यकार इस मामले में बड़े सजग रहे हैं। पूरे दुनिया के साहित्य को आप देखोगे तो इस समय आज का जो राइटर है, द कंटेम्परेरी राइटिंग ऑफ इन एवरी लैंग्वेज, he is much very worried about the environmental pollution, damages and dangers, चाहे वो कूट जी का डिसग्रेस हो, मैं अपने हिंदुस्तान की 24 भाषाओं की अगर बात करूं तो आप हैरान रहेंगे। पोटेकाट का एक उपन्यास है मछुआरे, जो समुद्र में और नदियों में और जो जल स्रोतों के लिए हमने जो विनाश किया है, आप उनके उस नावल में देख सकते हैं। तक्षी शिवशंकर पिल्ले का कयर है, जिसका अनुवाद रस्सी आया, उसमें वो सारा दक्षिण भारत में किस तरह के चेंजेज आए हैं, हमने विकास के नाम पे किस तरह का विनाश किया है, वो सारा कुछ देखने को मिलता है। इसी तरह कितने सारे उपन्यास आए, जैसे नंदी साहब ने बताया कि वो नर्मदा घाटी की योजना थी, भाखड़ा की थी या दामोदर की थी। हमारे उपन्यासकार बहुत सारे एक डूब उपन्यास है, जिसमें यही बताया कि कितने लोग डिस्प्लेस हुए हैं। जब भी हम प्रकृति को डिसग्रेस करेंगे, मानव जाति हमेशा डिस्प्लेस होगी, हमें याद रखना चाहिए। इसी मानव जाति की डिस्प्लेसमेंट की वजह से वो एक जगह से अपदस्थ होकर दूसरी जगह उजड़ती है, जाके बसती है। साहित्यकारों ने अपना इसमें बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं। लेकिन सच बात तो यह है कि समाज उतना सजग नहीं हुआ जितना होना चाहिए। नंदी साहब ने एक बहुत अच्छी बात बताई, इंदिरा गांधी ने भी इसी तरह के एक उसमें कहा था कि गरीब मुल्कों पे ये तोहमत लगाना छोड़ दीजिए, क्योंकि एक अमेरिकन की कंजम्पशन है, वो एक गरीब मुल्क से पता नहीं कितने ज्यादा गुना है। पूरे दुनिया के संसाधनों का दोहन वही लोग करते हैं, वही मुल्क करते हैं जो बहुत ज्यादा पढ़े लिखे हैं, बहुत ज्यादा, जिनको हम बहुत ज्यादा विकसित कहते हैं। और इस सारी चीज के बारे में महात्मा गांधी ने अपने हिंद स्वराज में एक हिंट दिया है कि मैं उस सभ्यता को विनाशकारी सभ्यता मानता हूं। वो शैतानी सभ्यता का नाम देते हैं। तो जब हमने पढ़ी, हम भी बड़े चौंक गए थे कि वो यूरोप की सभ्यता को शैतानी सभ्यता क्यों कह रहे हैं। अब समझ आया कि उनके कहने का अर्थ यही था कि जब मानव जाति के विकास के नाम पे जब आप पूरी सांस्कृतिक विरासत को नष्ट करेंगे, जब आप पर्यावरण को नष्ट करेंगे, फ्लोरा एंड फोना को नष्ट करेंगे, तो वो शैतानी सभ्यता कहलाएगी, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है। जहां तक हमारे साहित्यकारों का प्रश्न है, एक मैं छोटी सी उदाहरण देता हूं। बहुत समय से साहित्यकारों ने तो हमेशा जगाया, we have no time to stand and stare the beauties of nature, world is too much with us, but nobody cared, किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया, और हमने पांव पे अपने कुल्हाड़ी खुद ही मारना शुरू किया। हमारे हिंदी में एक आंदोलन है छायावाद की कविताओं का, छायावाद का, निराला है, पंत है, जयशंकर प्रसाद है, महादेव वर्मा है। इन लोगों ने प्रकृति का जो चित्रण किया, मानवीय रूप में किया, हर आदमी उसको पढ़ के लगता है कि प्रकृति हमारे साथ साथ जीवित है। लेकिन जो अगले जो लोग आए, उन्होंने देखा कि वो जो प्रकृति का छायावादी चित्रण था, जो रोमांटिक कंसेप्ट था, वो तो खत्म हो चुका है। अब जब भी कोई बड़ा हाईवे निकलता है, हजारों हजारों पेड़ कटते हैं, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं। जब कोई डैम बनता है, लाखों लाखों लोग डिस्प्लेस होते हैं। लेकिन हमें कहीं ना कहीं विकास और इस विनाश के बीच में संतुलन बनाना पड़ेगा, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं, और साहित्यकार इस काम में लगे हुए हैं। एक बात और मैं कहना चाहूंगा कि ये जो बाहर का वातावरण दूषित होता है, उससे पहले हमारे मनों का वातावरण दूषित होता है। ह्यूमन वैल्यूज पोल्यूटेड होते हैं। हमारे साहित्यकारों का ये दायित्व है कि दे शुड मेक दिस सोसाइटी वेरी सेंसिटिव अबाउट दिस। साहित्यकार एक काम कर सकता है, वो हमें एक दृष्टि देता है, वो हमें एक विजन देता है कि अगर इसी तरह से चलते रहे तो हम पता नहीं जाके कहाँ पहुंचेंगे, उस अंधी गुफा में चले जाएंगे जहां से वापसी का कोई रास्ता नहीं है। तो आज के एनवायरनमेंट को सुधारने से पहले साहित्यकारों का ये काम है कि वो जो हमारे मानवीय सभ्यता के जो मुद्दे हैं, उनके प्रति आने वाली पीढ़ी को सजग करे, उनके प्रति संवेदनशील बनाए। और वो संवेदनशीलता इतने बड़े व्यापक पे हो, नंदी साहब ने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के एजेंडे में आज के युग में पर्यावरण नहीं है। उनके दिमाग में सिर्फ एक बात है, किस तरह से हम अपनी सत्ता को बना के रखें। सत्ता कभी भी मानवीय मूल्यों के प्रति हमेशा से एक तरह से उसका दूसरा रुख रहा है, उसने कभी ध्यान नहीं दिया। ये काम हमारा है, हम उनको सजग करें, चेताएं, उनको बताएं। और साहित्यकारों ने इस दशा में वाकई जितना अब थोड़ा बहुत कुछ हो रहा है, अगर थोड़ा बहुत चिंताएं होने लगी हैं, थोड़ी संस्थाएं बनी हैं, एनजीओ बने हैं, लोगों के बीच में जागरूकता भी आई है, ये उसका भी सबसे बड़ा उसका उदाहरण यही है कि लेखकों ने, विचारकों ने, आप जैसे समाज शास्त्रियों ने उनको जगाने में बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया है। इतनी दुनिया में इतनी सारी किताबें आई हैं, मैं बता नहीं सकता कि उन्होंने मानवीय सभ्यता की तो छोड़िए, इवन के जानवरों के बारे में, उनके अधिकारों के, वुड जी का उपन्यास है डिसग्रेस, दैट इज अगेंस्ट द ब्रूटल किलिंग ऑफ द डॉग्स। इसी तरह से बहुत सारे ऐसे हिंदी के उपन्यास हैं जिन्होंने हमें पर्यावरण के बारे में सजग करने की चेतना दी है। आज साहित्य अकादमी आदिवासी लेखन को आजकल बड़े केंद्र में लेके आया है। हम हर साल आयोजन करते हैं। उस आदिवासी लेखन के मूल में जल, जंगल और जमीन है। जानवरों की सबसे बड़ी चिंता यही है, बुद्धि का उपन्यास है, वो उस चिंता को लेके आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और एक तरह से सजगता भी फैला रहे हैं। मैं अधिक समय ना लेता हुआ, क्योंकि ये जो हमारा इनागुरल सेशन है, इसमें बहुत सारे वक्ता हैं और पूरी दुनिया के वक्ता हैं। आदिवासी को मैं ये मान के चलता हूँ कि अजीत कौर जी ने बड़ा काम किया और साहित्य अकादमी आपके महायज्ञ में जुड़ी हुई है और हमारा यही मकसद है कि इस खूबसूरत विश्व के पन्नों पे खून के कतरे जब भी गिरते हैं, बारूद की गंध जब भी फैलती है, तो इतना बड़ा विनाश होता है, जितना बड़ा विकास जो सदियों में हम हासिल करते हैं वो 3 दिन के युद्ध में समाप्त हो जाता है। 3000 साल की हमारी जितनी हमने विरासत इकट्ठी की है वो 3 दिन में नष्ट हो जाती है। तो ये भी एक बड़ी चिंता का विषय है जो आज हमारे सामने है। हमारा युद्ध, हम अपने हमारी पीढ़ी ने पिछले युद्ध नहीं देखे, लेकिन ये देख रहे हैं। तो ये एक तरह से सजग करने वाली बात है। ये भी जब मानवीय संवेदनहीनता बिल्कुल निचले स्तर पे जाती है तब युद्ध होता है। और लोग ये मानते हैं कि जहां शब्द का अंत होगा वहां हिंसा का प्रारंभ होगा। तो कोशिश करिए, मैं आज सारे लेखकों को, कलमकारों को ये आह्वान करता हूं कि वो उस शब्द की शक्ति को खत्म ना होने दे, शब्द का अंत ना होने दे। जहां भी शब्द का अंत होगा वहां हिंसा प्रारंभ होगी और जहां हिंसा होगी वहां पर्यावरण का विनाश होगा और पर्यावरण का विनाश होगा तो वही प्रकृति और पुरुष के बीच का जो संतुलन है वो समाप्त होगा और पूरी मानव जाति इसके लिए एक ऐसे कगार पे आ जाएगी जहां से वापस लौटना संभव नहीं है। एक बार फिर आप सभी का अभिवादन और अभिनंदन। और मैं आशा करता हूं कि ये 2 दिन का जो हमारा, जिसमें पूरे सार कंट्री शामिल है, हम सबके विरासत एक है, हम सबकी चिंताएं एक हैं, हम सबके सरोकार एक हैं, हमारा समाज, हमारी समाज की प्रणालियां एक हैं। हम सब मिला के, कुल मिला के, इकट्ठे होके इस मुहिम को आगे बढ़ाएं, समाज के चिंतन को एक बार नई दिशा और दशा दें, तभी ये काम चलेगा। नमस्कार, जय हिंद।
धन्यवाद आदरणीय कौशिक सर, हमेशा की तरह एक महत्वपूर्ण संदेश दिया आपने बहुत सुंदरता के साथ। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। Actually, as the written program goes, we are expected now to play Tara Gandhi Bhattacharya's video, but the presence, the speakers who are present here online now, first let us listen to them. So with the approval of Madhav Kaushik ji, Dr. K. Srinivas Rao ji, and Ajit Ma, I request first Suresh Goyal ji to share his views. Adaraniya Goyal ji.
जी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका कि आपने मुझे इस बहुत एक बड़ी इम्पोर्टेंट कॉन्फ्रेंस है ये जिसमें आपने मेरे को इनवाइट किया. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल अगर आप मेरे को इजाजत दें तो मैं हिंदी इंग्लिश में अगर सम्मिलित बोलूं क्योंकि देयर आर राइटर्स फ्रॉम द अदर कंट्रीज who may not understand Hindi. Therefore, I will be mostly in English here. First of all, I would like to compliment Madam Ajit Kaur ji, the president of Oswal and Sahitya Academy. I've noticed that year after year, Sahitya Academy has come to the support of Oswal, and Madam Ajit Kaur ji is in holding this annual literature conference meeting year after year, and I think this requires a great deal of determination and sympathy, empathy really for the cause of literature in the area. I would also like to thank all the panelists, a very eminent panelist. Ashish Nandi is here. I have a great deal of admiration for him. And we have Mr. Alfonso. They are the people I recognize, and therefore I take their names. Sahitya Academy, there are so many very, very high-level people here. Secretary Mr. Srinivasan, the MC, the Vice President. Thanks to all of them, really. And before I start, I would like to really compliment both Ashish Nandi and Shri Madhav Kaushik ji for putting things in perspective. Ashish Nandi for basically highlighting the cause for respecting environment, working on the area of environment, and he brought in the political part of it really so admirably. And we all know, having dealt with environment even at international level, we know how closely the politics amongst nations is really part of what we do in the environment. And Satish Kaushik ji, I think coming from the kind of background that I come from, what he said that it is the human values. हमारे जो संस्कृति है, हमारे जो विचार हैं, so first of all, we need to really change those human values, develop those human values before we think about environmental issues, because those are part of our culture really. And we need to really get back to those old values that we inherited from our forefathers. So nature is very much a part of our culture, and I remember our pujas, prayers, they all basically are prayers to the God, which is culture, which is environment, Prakriti. You would have noticed, dear panel, that this year the theme of the festival, literature and environment, but this is actually under the ambit of BIMSTEC this year, as Madam Ajit Kaur mentioned. And I think this is a very, very significant change which has been done. In the we have been talking to each other before the conference began. And I think to focus on BIMSTEC is actually expanding the coverage of the conference. If you look at the entire region, the SAARC had excluded certain very important countries who share the same kind of cultural unanimity, or should I call it consensus, but I call it cultural congruence, which we share in the region. We have representatives from Thailand, we have from Myanmar, and they know, and as well as others, that the kind of cultural bonds we share is very, very unique. Many years ago, there was a study done by the United Nations where they wanted to figure out one common denomination, cultural denomination, which exists amongst various countries in the world. It was a global study. And they found it very, very significant that Ramayana is one cultural phenomenon. I'm calling it cultural because some people may call it spiritual, religion, but for me, it's actually defines by culture. It defines the culture of people in the religion. Like in the case of Thailand, the religion mostly practiced is Buddhism, but the culturally, Thailand is mostly actually, I mean, if you look at the way they pray, Ramayana is the main part of their daily lives. Similarly in Myanmar. So Buddhist, but therefore, Ramayana was found to be the most common cultural icon amongst a large number of countries. So those countries were Southeast Asia and South Asia. Similarly, I mean, I've lived for a long part of my diplomatic career in Southeast Asia. And my last station was Laos. And then I traveled to Myanmar. I've been traveling to Thailand. It is striking really in nature that the most common festival in all these countries, New Year, which is similar to one of our New Year festival, and that is Holi. In Myanmar or Thailand or in Laos or in India. In fact, when I was ambassador in Laos and I did the Holi festival at a residence for the first time, and the Laotian Prime Minister who I had invited and who had kindly agreed to attend the celebrations, he was struck by the similarity between Holi and the Lao Pimai. So I told him, I said, Mr. Prime Minister, this is where we come from. And therefore, when we talk about relations between India and Southeast Asia, not talk only about the modern context of economy, politics, strategy. We should talk about civilizational world in which we live. And if we discover our civilizational links, then we find that we are practically similar. And that was also reflected at a cultural program we had done at Rashtrapati Bhavan during the last ASEAN summit in Delhi in 2012. So that is what is striking, that BIMSTEC actually takes our unanimity cultural consensus forward from South Asia into the Bay of Bengal to Southeast Asia. And I think from that point of view, I would like to applaud Madam Ajit Kaursi as well as Sahitya Academy to do this festival over the BIMSTEC platform rather than just limiting it to SAARC. And it is not a coincidence that the festival is being held just about 2 days before there will be a BIMSTEC summit, of course, on a virtual platform on 30th March. There will be a BIMSTEC summit, which will be addressed by all the BIMSTEC heads of government or state. So in that context, this literary conference acquires another new, very, very important dimension. Literature reflects, to my mind, I'm not a literary writer. I write, but basically on international relations and other things. But literature is a mirror to our own culture. I mean, if we think of literature, I mean, there's a lot of English literature, but all that English literature again relates to our own ethos, the way we think. And from that point of view, literature is a very, very important part because it shows the mirror to the society, not in a kind of sporadic manner, but in a continuous manner as a society evolves. Therefore, if we need to talk about how the society is developing, what are the problems, we only need to look at the literature. Other things like visual arts, performing arts, etc., I think they're limited. But that truly reflects how a writer sees the society around him. And from that point of view, I do hope that there'll be two things in this conference, either this year or later. One, examine the folklore of the BIMSTEC countries. Because when you examine the folklores, then you discover how the countries have been together, how the societies, sorry, not countries, I will talk about societies, how the societies have been together in the era gone past, and where they diverged from each other and maintained their links despite divergences because of various geographical and political reasons. So please, if the authors can examine the development of the folk literature in these countries, I think that would be a great contribution to our understanding each other. And number two, I think, though our languages are very different, Thai sounds so different from Hindi or Sanskrit or Tamil or Sinhalese, etc., etc. But having read some of the literature in these countries, I find that there is a great commonness in the linguistic idioms that we use, because the idioms again are reflective of our cultural roots. So if the modern writers can also examine these commonalities or how they differ from each other, the linguistic idioms which are commonly used in the literature in these countries, I think that would be another great contribution to our understanding of each other's society. I think I've spoken more than what I intended to speak. I should put a stop here. And once again, I would like to compliment everyone for making this great to not just the literature, but to develop that kind of civilizational understanding once again between this region of BIMSTEC. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Goel, sir. Thanks a lot. May I now invite KJ Alfonso, yet another eminent scholar who is present with us. Alfonso.
Good morning, everybody. I'm extremely grateful to my very dear friend, Ajit Kaur. I would even call her my soulmate for inviting me to participate in this webinar of literary giants. Literally speaking, I think everybody has contributed so much. And of course, I would call the ultimate guru of study on society, Ashish Nandi, whose books one is read before one got into civil service, and that was a basic textbook. So one is so happy to listen to him, and also to the other distinguished scholars. I don't consider myself to be a famous writer. I'm not. I've just written 2 books. One, of course, was my autobiography published by Penguin at a very inappropriate age. I was just 42 when Penguin published my autobiography, but it's done well. And I just published another book a few months back on the achievements of the government, which is a very, very objective analysis of the government. And I have devoted a complete chapter on environment and what India needs to do in terms of trying to make things better. I've said Ajit Kaur is kind of my soulmate because, every year she sends me one paragraph message. It's a hard letter, a physical letter she sends me at every Christmas. And I read it so many times, and I've collected it over the past 5 years. And for me, that is a soul, really the soul of what humanity is, just that one paragraph. The way her heart beats for humanity, for everybody out there, for the planet, for the universe. So for me, just that one paragraph she sends me every year, it's kind of the cornerstone of my thinking process for the next 1 year, and also my activities. Well, I've traveled across the world quite a bit, especially as a tourism minister of India. I have traveled across the world. And I see so much of, cultural bond between India and especially our neighboring countries. And of course, the root of that bonding is just not the Hindu, literature and culture, but a much deeper, let's say, Buddhist bond. And I consider myself Buddhism to be very much an Indian religion, very much also thinking process, a thought process, which has influenced the global thinking so much. So I think we can't just say that it's just one, set of religious beliefs which are the bonding. I think it's a multiple set of religious beliefs and the supporting literature which has influenced, regional thinking. And I think fundamentally, ultimately, if you look at all this literature, it has got so much to do with man's linkage with nature. I had also taken philosophy for my IAS examinations, for my civil service examination. And I find that if you dig so deep into Indian philosophy, I mean, it's got so much to offer. All our ancient literature, all that we are so much accustomed to, which also part of the of humanity around us is accustomed to, is talking so much about the bondage of man with nature. The fact is, it verges on the verge of worshipping nature, actually, in most of our literature. I think this is a key because today, I was just reading in the newspapers the other day, 35 of the 50 most polluted cities in the world are in India. And the national capital of India, Delhi, is the most polluted capital in the world, followed by Dhaka, our neighbor. And I think these are issues which hugely worry me. It deeply worries me. And I raise these questions in the parliament very often. What is humanity doing for its survival? I mean, I have been reading, of course, Harari, whom I consider to be the biggest intellectual of the century, even though he's just, what, 44, 45. His book, Homo Sapiens, where he says how every generation, starting from about 10,000 years back, has systematically destroyed the planet, destroyed the universe. And we continue to do it. And of course, we meet every year, the last time being at COP26 in Glasgow. Most nations are even now unwilling to commit as to how we are going to protect the universe. India has made a very firm commitment of net zero emission by 2070. But the point is, are we on the right track? Are we doing things? How are we going to getting rid of dirty power? I mean, coal, which is the dirtiest power in the world. The world community still keeps on installing, coal-fired plants, nuclear-powered plants, and the kind of emission that we put out, each one of us, into the atmosphere. And we think it's a work of the government to do all these things. I think we are completely mistaken. In fact, I asked one of the mischievous questions in the parliament the other day. I said, look here, it is kind of predicted by some scholars that the human species will be extinct in another 100 years. And I said it won't be a very unhappy thing to happen for the universe and the rest of the universe if that happens. I said, will the government expedite this process of extinction? Man is the cruelest creature on the face of the earth. The kind of cruelty that we inflict on the planet, but also on each other. If we don't respect the planet, we don't respect each other. I mean, the entire underlying philosophy of Indian culture, Indian civilization, Vasudeva Kudumbakam, that we are one with the universe, that we are one with the air, with fire, with the water, and also with every other soul, every other human species, and also non-human species, the rocks, the trees, and everything, and every other human being who can't afford to have 4 meals a day, 3 meals a day, can't afford to live in a bungalow, is also so much part of me. Unless all this really reflects in our literature and beyond that in our thinking process, I think we are completely on the wrong track. We are completely on the wrong track. So I really congratulate governments which take the initiative to create basic infrastructure for the poor, so that there is some dignity in their lives. Like when we construct toilets for a whole country, we built 11 crore toilets so that a woman and a girl doesn't have to really go searching in the forest before the sun rises or wait for the sun to set to go to a toilet. And when you provide drinking water right in your home, and when you provide medical assistance, when you enable a woman to live longer because today she doesn't have to burn wood anymore and she has access to CNG. I think all this is part of the Indian thinking philosophy or thinking process of Vasudeva Kudumbakam, that we are all one. We all have the right to exist. And I'm so happy we have in this group of people who feel so much in their writings that the humanity is one, the suffering of anybody anywhere is one. That when such cruelty is inflicted on Ukraine today by somebody for his own personal ambitions, I think to stand by them, to feel when 3.5 million people are forced to run away from that country because somebody wants to grab something else. I think we need to reflect all this in our thinking process, in our writing process. And I think one of the things which is not really on the front pages of newspaper, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka today is completely broken. People are starving. There is no food. There is no petrol. There is no foreign exchange. I think these are times when our intellectuals, our writers really need to bring out these issues from the last pages of the newspapers and the media on the front pages and say they matter, not only because they are our neighbors. Yes, let's look after our neighbors first. I mean, this look east policy of looking into our neighbors first, taking care of them first, we working with them, I think that is so important because we are not going to take care of our neighbors. Whom are we going to take care of? I think all this has to form not only just part of our literature, of our soul. That's why I said, when Ajit Kaur sends me that one paragraph letter, which expresses the heart and soul of humanity, that we are one, we all need to work as one, I think it makes so much sense to me. I try to live a certain life, which I believe is part of the Vasudhaiva Kudambam. I'm sorry, I'm being autobiographical. In my bungalow, which government is given me, to Lodhi Estate, I have 43 people staying there. Their food, their clothes, their education, their medical, everything that they need, laptops, everything that I take care. I'm not saying I'm doing anything great, but if I can't do that, what is the point? My salary as a member of parliament, my pension as an IAS officer, my wife's interest, everything goes into that. Am I doing anything great? No, I'm not. It's just my duty as a human being. If I don't do it, I'm a rotten human being. If I can live in this ministerial bungalow thinking that these boundaries protect me, they don't protect me. I mean, if I want to feel within myself that I'm a decent human being doing some little bit, I think this is my little tiny bit I'm trying to do. I think all this has to reflect in our literature, in our thinking. Thank you so much, Ajit Ji and Sahitya Academy for organizing this. And let's all take this forward from our writings, which reflect what is the passion in our hearts, to actual actions which will make the world better. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Alfonso, for your brilliant talk. May I now invite Manzoor ul Islam Sahab, eminent scholar from Bangladesh.
Thank you very much. I'll have to be brief because Sunday is a working day in our country. It's not a holiday, and I have a class waiting. But I was listening with apt interest, attention to what Mr. Alfonso was talking about and what Madhav Kaushikji was talking about before that. And I'm delighted to hear what Professor Ashish Nandi has delivered to us. And he's always original. He's always someone who provokes you into thinking out of the box. And today, his lecture was no exception. In fact, the first sentence he spoke speaks volume and tells us exactly where we should stand. He said, environment has not been sufficiently politicized. Now, environment is one of the most politicized issues in our time. But what he means by not being politicized in the right way is that as it stands now, environment has been politicized by all the big interest groups, all the parties who are playing a big role in controlling the production and distribution and consumption of fossil fuel, who are responsible for carbon emission, who are responsible for damming big rivers. Look at Amazon, what is happening there. A slice of Amazon as big as one of our districts is disappearing every year. And what would be the effects of these erosion of environment and disappearance of forests? Environment pollution is not something which stays confined within a geographical territory. It's wrong to assume that one country's environmental pollution doesn't travel to another country. Or a dam set up on an upper riparian region doesn't affect the lower riparian region. This is very wrong because environment doesn't care about borders. And carbon emissions in the West will eventually find a place in the lungs and rivers and the water systems of the so-called underdeveloped or developing countries. And so what is politics? I understand Professor Ashish Nandi was speaking from an ideological position which we all like to share. Politics of consensus, politics which is participatory, in which the stakeholders are consulted before any decision or major decision is taken, where everybody is free to offer ideas. And in a spirit of enlightened conversation, decisions are taken, and decisions are not taken for perpetuity, because whenever there is something developing, contingent factor emerging, you have to adjust your plan and address the emerging issues. Climate is not something which is stable anymore. We cannot predict rainfalls anymore. Floods in Bangladesh do not obey the calendar anymore. Professor Nandi talked about Ganges losing navigability. The river Podda, which is what we call Ganges after it crosses into Bangladesh, is heavily silted nowadays. I mean, deforestation in Nepal will invariably increase siltation in our rivers. Faraka has been mentioned, and it's a very old issue, but new dams are created. Now 54 rivers cross into Bangladesh from India. And if you have dams on all 54 rivers, you might have a control on our water flow, but eventually, please remember, water flow stopping in one country becoming arid and saline, will affect the other neighboring countries. So the fingers of environmental pollution are very long indeed. They don't spare anyone. I'm happy to see the very strong stands taken on environment by all the speakers. I congratulate Mr. Alfonso when he mentioned that Ukraine crisis should awaken our conscience. Now, Bangladesh is living with a refugee population, the Rohingyas, 1 million strong, and they're the greatest cause of environmental destruction in a huge tract of land. We are a land-starved country. We cannot afford our land to go waste, but we could not turn our eyes to the suffering of these people. Not to speak of other problems they have created. I'm just concerned about the environmental pollution being created in a large tract which was so pure at one stage of time. So what is happening today is environmental politics is taking the wrong turn. It's not simply regional, not simply local, but look at the global play of the huge actors like this Conference of Parties, 26 Glasgow conference, which was about United States climate change predictions and mitigation efforts. The decision was taken to restrict carbon emission not to 1.5%, what the scientists suggest, but to 2.4%. Why? Because once again, the military industrial complex intervened and had their say. If COP26, in which all the world's leaders were invited and they shared the platform and there were talk shops everywhere, I could hear hours of deliberations, but look at the results. The decisions are legally not binding. What does it mean? Any country, any member is free to flout the convention rules and do their own. And signs are already clear that many countries are flouting even that 2.4% cap that COP26 had put on environmental pollution. And the same I congratulate also Madhav Kaushikji, who has invited, he has given a very fantastic um, um, pair of contrasts, Binash versus Bikash. And this is not simply happening in the neighboring countries, India and Bangladesh and other places, where we are thinking about development at what cost? At the cost of an environmental degradation. If development invites environmental degradation, how can you address this particular issue? We are not against development. Development is very welcome in countries like ours, but there should be plans ahead of how to mitigate the problems that will arise out of these development wars that would go on. In Bangladesh, these are going on forever. But this advanced plan is missing, because this advanced plan would put certain parties into some kind of difficulty or jeopardy. So addressing environmental damages before a plan is passed, I don't see this is happening in our country or any country that I know of, not even in the large global stage. Look at the development happening in China, developments happening in India and other countries in Bangladesh as well. We do not have a plan B. What happens if development backfires in environmental terms? Is there a plan B to address the issues that will rise then? We do not have. I have studied many many development projects in our country. Not any of them, not even one, addresses the issue with great detail. Well, there are lip services paid to environmental issues, of course, but no detailed plan, no step-by-step, phase-wise mitigation plan, which is very much needed. We have a nuclear power plant which is being completed. Maybe in 2 years' time, we'll have generation from this plant of electricity. The question what to do with the waste water and the water generated from nuclear plants is so contaminated, it remains contaminated for thousands of years. Where do you dispose them? How to dispose them? We have been told that this is basically a clean energy, but we are not very sure if this is the case. Now, I credit those parties which are standing up for environmental protection. And lastly, let's talk about us who write and have creative abilities to convey our messages to the people through our stories, songs, ballads, poems. We have been doing our bit. Madhav Kaushikji also mentioned how literature can awaken consciousness of the people. This has been the case all along. Our greatest environmentalist has been Rabindranath Tagore. He is the one who has been at the forefront of our environmental fight. And he has pleaded so many years ago that environment should be something which should be protected. We have a scientist who was an environmentalist, Jagadish Chandra Bose. He also talked about environment. And our writers and poets in our times, starting with 1947 and then 1971, have been consistently harping on the issue of environmental protection, showing in detail how lives are shattered when a river erosion takes place or a flooding suddenly emerges. The flash floods occur now with frequencies which are unheard of before. So the long and the short of it is that we have to be aware. We have to put pressure on our governments. We have to put pressure on every party which is an actor in the game. We have to put pressure as small countries coming together to put pressure on the big countries and on those military industrial complexes which somehow prepare the blue plan for all the development wars which suit their particular paradigms. So once again, Ashish Nandi's very wise saying that we should politicize environment in the right way, so that at the end of the day, it's pleasant. He said he would be very unpleasant. I welcome this unpleasantness because at the end, I hope if the marginalized people, those who are affected directly, poorer countries, which have a satisfaction that their words have been heard, that would be pleasant enough. I thank everyone present here, particularly and especially Ajit Kaurji, for whom I have the greatest of respects, and she has been very kind to me, inviting to FOSWAL and now BIMSTEC year after year. And it was such a pleasure listening to her words of wisdom all the time. I benefited from it. Ashish Nandi is someone I like to hear. I would like to hear from him for hours if he is willing to talk for hours, because at the end of his lectures, I always carry something home, which is something that stays with me. So thank you, Srinivas Raoji. With your permission, I will go and attend my class now.
Thanks a lot, Syed Manzurul Saab. Thanks a lot. Could we now invite Kunzang ma'am? She's from Bhutan.
Good morning to everyone, and greetings from my little valley, far away, tucked away in the Himalayas. And with my greetings and my happiness at seeing all the familiar faces, I would like to tell you how happy I am. And in this moment, I would like to once again, like everybody else, thank Ajit Kaurji, who has been the instrument in bringing us all together. And it's always a very humbling honor for me to be able to listen to the articulation and the philosophies and the thoughts and visions of all the other speakers. And I'm not an environmentalist, but I am really interested in folk literature. And I cannot give you more thoughts or visions or ideas on what has already been articulated. But what I would like to say is that by looking at and trying to understand what has been our traditional beliefs about nature and our relationship to nature, I learn so much, and I find the living thread of who we are and from where we have come and where we are going today. And as a least developing country, we are on the modern road of development, modernization. And from what I've heard from all of you, it is a frightening journey that we are going to undertake, I think. From the experiences, from the thoughts, and from the focus of what the eminent speakers have said today, I don't know, maybe we should have stayed in our own stage of being underdeveloped, living with nature, respecting nature, fearing nature, and appreciating nature, rather than trying to take control of nature and plan for better lives and better welfare. So today, I feel, from what I've heard, how much I should appreciate where I am today. I'm in a little village. Spring is just coming on. The trees are coming into blossom. There are blossoms everywhere. I look out of my window and I see lines and lines of farmers carrying farmyard manure to their fields because it is the potato planting season. And since last few years, we have become dependent to some degree on fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. And this year there was suddenly a panic saying that, there's going to be less, that chemical fertilizers are not going to be available because of the situation in the world. And while some farmers panicked, the others just said, but we have our own fertilizer. We have our cattle. And that was so reassuring to say that we've come far, but we have not left our roots. We know where our realities are, we know what the resources are. And it is, we're at this juncture. Should we go forward and do what everybody else is doing to be called developed people, educated people, and forget what we have come this far based on what our, our generations before us have lived? Do we need more? The question, I think, is always that we need more. And the more we get globalized and become aware of what everybody else has, we want that. And in this globalized world, where everybody knows what the other one person has, we become greedy. We do not have enough, and we're always craving for more. The digital age, the virtual age has come in. We see what everybody has, and we want exactly that. And that is, I think, the biggest enemy of what we have been taught as Buddhists, to be able to say enough. We've lost the concept of enough, I feel. And as a child, I'm an old woman, but even as a child, I can remember the elders always said, your biggest value is when you can say enough. Do I need more? Isn't it enough? Do you need a bigger house? Do you need more cars? You have to be able to say enough. And that is the virtue of enough we've lost. And this is when we've lost that, I think that's when we get into trouble. So I don't have a lot of things to say, but I want to say that some of our traditional beliefs we have to hold on to. We cannot just jet around to attend conferences on environment, sign memorandums, but we have to hold on and say where we've come from. And we know that generations before us have lived the way they lived, not taking power or trying to control nature, but living with nature. And I think it's very, very important that we learn to live with nature in respect, in appreciation, and not try to take control and say, we know it all. Human beings have the power. And with that, I would like to end and thank you once again for all the people from Sete Academy, and especially Ajit Ji for making this possible, and little voices like mine coming, just a little squeak among the thinkers and scientists. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. May I now request Abhi Subedi ji, eminent scholar from Nepal.
Academy, especially
thank you, sir.
G for making this possible, and little voices
I would like to
coming,
be very brief,
speak
very briefly.
Thinkers and scientists.
I would like to
so much for the
address, first of all, Ajit Didi, Professor Ashish Nandi.
May I now request Abhi Subedi ji, what's going on, scholar from Nepal,
and Professor Manzurul Islam, Kunjang Roder ji, and all the distinguished scholars who are participating in this colloquium, opening session.
The recording
Yes. Yes, sir.
There is some voices are merging in this recording, so I can hear.
I have paused the recording actually.
The voices are merging, so I cannot.
Second, just let me see.
If you could check it.
Recording का button
Opening session.
recording
Yes. Yes, sir.
There is some voices are merging in this recording, so I can hear.
I have paused the recording actually.
The voices are merging, so I cannot.
Second, just let me see.
If you could check it. Opening says. Yes. Yes, sir. There is some voices are merging in this recording. So I have paused the recording actually. The voices are merging, so I cannot download the.
Second, just let me see.
If you could check it. Opening says. Yes. Yes, sir. There is some. Is it okay? Voices are merging in this recording. So
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
No, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think. Could we go?
is it okay?
No, it is going on.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think. Could we go?
Is it okay?
No, it is going on.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think. No, it is going on.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think. No, it is going on.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back. Yeah.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think.
See, recording has to be continued, but playing the recording back.
No, sir, actually, I have paused the recording, but still it's going on.
Oh no, do not pause the recording. Somebody is playing the record, not somebody is playing back the recording of the conference.
I think now it's clear, I think.
Hello.
So we are back. It was with the host recording problem. May I now request Abhi Subedi ji to please continue.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I won't take much time because there was some problem in the recording and so on. That's why I missed some part of the discourses presented by previous scholars because of the voicing problem. I don't have much to say, actually.
It was with the
Whenever
recording problem.
Whenever
I
we
now request Abhi Subedi ji to please continue.
Okay, I'll speak a few.
इनके यहाँ से मगर वही खुद बोल रहा है
Scholars because of the voicing problem. Very distinguished scholars present here. Didi, Professor Ashish Nandi, and others. What I just wanted to say is that whenever we organized meetings about ecology, environment, and nature, Prakriti, we evoke the tradition, literary tradition, to talk about nature. So I think there is always a, in this region, there is always a clash between the form and the theme. Whenever we talk about nature, we talk about the form and the theme of nature. For example, in Nepal, the environmentalists are talking about the Himalayas, the melting Himalayas and the ecological problem. But at the same time, they are also talking about the poetry of the glorification of the Himalayas. So this kind of double perception of nature continues, is a character of South Asia, of our region actually. So to me, it seems there is always a clash between form and theme in this region. Form and nature as theme, always going on for ages. And then the literary writers who are always concerned with the form, a certain form of defining a literary form, they always use nature as theme. But how much can that be effective is a question of debate. There have been very important meetings, environmental meetings, the big global conferences about nature and ecological disaster and so on. What is the role of the writers? What role are we playing? This has always been a question, and we have always repeatedly asked the same question to ourselves. We always ask the same question to ourselves whenever we meet to discuss about nature and our role actually as writers, our role in the preservation of ecology, in fighting against the forces of ecology. Finally, what we do is we evoke the form. We evoke the kavya, we evoke the theater, we evoke the songs, and we evoke the art. So it has always been the same case. Poetry, for example, whenever we talk about the limitations of our power, limitation of the power of the writers and literary imagination. That is why perhaps to find a certain solution, the writers in this region have even created myths, mythology, folklore and so on. This is one way of responding to the chaotic situation that is happening all the time in our part, not only in our part of the world, all over the world. So this is the underlying theme of the relationship between ecology and literature and nature. So that is what we are going to do in this conference also. We are going to listen to the voices of the writers, painters and artists, but how much of that is effective, how influential the writers are in creating a culture, creating an atmosphere, creating a power to combat with the forces of the ecological disaster. So this is a theme. This is such a theme that we love to repeat the theme. We love to talk about this theme. And then incidentally, our literary sessions coincide with the global sessions about ecology and nature. This is a very interesting coincidence. How much of the power do we have? About that, when W. Yeats, the Irish poet, died, W. H. Auden was very shocked. He wrote a poem on the death of W. Yeats. And in that poem, he wrote these lines: "Mad Ireland hurt him into poetry, but the madness of Ireland is still there. For poetry makes nothing happen. It lives in the valley of its own shame." So probably the literary wars don't make things happen in a world where there are very strong forces of distraction and also the forces of negative forces that are playing a role in the environmental degradation. How powerful can our voice become in such seminars when we meet and we talk about that? As I said earlier, for example, we glorify the Himalayas, but at the same time, we talk about the environmental degradation, disaster, the melting snow, and so on. So this goes side by side. This is a kind of a double bind. When we as writers meet and talk about nature and the preservation of nature and ecology, we talk about this very double bind. How much strength do we have to create a force to kind of stop the forces, negative forces from playing very negative role in the environmental protection. So this is one of the several sessions that we are organizing here. But that I consider such sessions very important because they create the voice, they address culture, they address the continued efforts of the human beings, and this renews our trust in our creative power. That energy, that spirit is very important, and literature evokes that. Writers repeat that, artists repeat that. That is what we are doing with this theme, probably developed, suggested by Ajit Kaur Didi. This time also, previously also, I remember some years ago, we discussed on the very theme. That was the theme of our conference some years ago, when very eminent scholars, some of them are present here, made their very important presentations at that conference also. And this time also we are talking about this very theme. We continue to talk about this theme because we understand, we know the power of the literary creative culture. What the world lacks now is this very creative imagination, this very productive imagination. This is spirit of peace, this is spirit of humanity, this is spirit of freedom and liberation. If we cannot make anything happen, at least we can make something happen. That is, we can stress on the power of liberation. We stress on the power of the creative writers, the inner dynamism, the dynamism which is one of freedom and liberation. That is very essential for saving the earth, for saving the environment, saving our life in a world that is going dirty, going mad every day. The writers, even the small number with a limited power, when they gather, when they meet together, they read their poems, they made painting exhibitions, they play some pieces of music, and they repeat the very old folk songs and so on, so which is a great power. I believe in that power, believing fully well that we cannot bring about much changes in this world, which is dominated by politicians, which is dominated by the forces of adversity. We cannot do much, but what we can do is we can address the very important culture of the mind, the creative power, the spirit of liberation. So I guess this, I'm confident that this seminar is about that very spirit of liberation, that inner confidence, which we are stressing by evoking poetry and art, and that's what we are doing. And this is a very important achievement that we have made at this meeting also. And with these few words, I would like to take leave. And sorry about this recording problem and so on. There's nothing much one can do, but I hope I'm able to make my point with this few words. I just like to take leave. And thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir. There was some disturbance actually because Professor Subedi sir has a cell phone and YouTube was on. So we are live on YouTube. So that was being played there. Now Subedi sir is muted, so the problem is solved. It was purely a technical problem, but I am happy that Subedi sir conveyed his brilliant message. Thanks a lot. Now we will have to follow a time frame a little, and let us now invite Kanchana ji, Kanchana Priyakantha from Sri Lanka. Please unmute yourself first, Kanchana ji.
Yeah. Greetings, everyone. Long live Madam Ajit Kaur. I have been taking part in the literature conferences organized by FOSWAL since 2017. I had high hopes that we could meet each other at this year's BIMSTEC Literature Conference. But the prevailing situation in the world has forced us to do the opposite. Nevertheless, in Hemingway's novel, The Old Man and the Sea, the main character, Santiago, says that a man can be destroyed but not defeated. Santiago's courage and pride pushes him forward throughout the novel, even when it looks like hope is lost, but is never defeated. Likewise, even though the situations are challenging, the Foswal family never gave up on their noble cause and the family members. They have worked laboriously in collaboration with Sahitya Academy to bring the family members together virtually when the physical conference was not allowed by the circumstances. Even though it looks so close and yet so far, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude once again to our Marji, Madam Ajit Kaur, and the entire team for their ceaseless endeavors. Thankful to you, we have been able to greet each other across the borders affectionately, at least virtually. And I want to be equally thankful to the organizing committee for selecting environment and literature, our only home, as the main theme, which can be considered not only as universal, but also timely, as we are trapped in a period where the consequences of insensitivity toward the environment is being harvested by the entire world. Our home planet is the third planet from the sun, and the only place we know of so far that's inhabited by living things. While Earth is the fifth largest planet in the solar system, it is the only world in our solar system with liquid water on the surface, making the Earth most notably unique. The Earth has a very hospitable temperature and mix of chemicals that have made life abundant, and this temperature has allowed liquid water to exist for extended periods of time. Earth's vast oceans provided a convenient place for life to begin about 3.8 billion years ago. As mentioned before, with a radius of 3,959 miles, Earth is the biggest of the terrestrial planets and the fifth largest planet overall. From an average distance of 93 million miles, Earth is exactly one astronomical unit away from the Sun, because one astronomical unit is the distance from the Sun to Earth. This unit provides an easy way to quickly compare planets' distances from the Sun. So it takes about 8 minutes for light from the Sun to reach our planet. The name Earth is considered to be at least 1,000 years old. The name Earth is a Germanic word which simply means the ground. When all the other planets except for Earth were named after Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. As we all know, Earth is the home to over 7 billion people. This amazing planet has allowed millions of species of plants, trees, and animals, from the smallest bird to the biggest blue whale, to live on it. And we rely on our planet for everything we need, like life-giving food, water, and oxygen. We've only got one Earth, and we must learn to be grateful to her for letting us to live on her. Unfortunately, the so-called most intelligent species on the Earth, the human beings, have forgotten about the luxury the Earth has allowed us to enjoy. Not only about that, but also many have forgotten the fact that beings, whether great or small, are connected with one another and affect and influence one another. The onset of 2020 was a year which showcased us how powerful the nature is. Just a very tiny creation of nature can still hold the control of the entire world. Therefore, if humans still think they want to continue their existence on this earth safe and sound, we must definitely make attempts to develop a sustainable living before it's too late. I'm sure that we will be able to listen to a number of important scholarly articles on how literature is intended to contribute to the assurance of the existence of human beings on this beloved earth in order to prevent their extinction. So I think I am intending to give a very short speech, because it's close to 12:30 now. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Budha Charanji is still not there, but Budha Charanji is there now. Yeah. Let us invite Budha Charanji now. He is from Thailand. Please unmute yourself, Budha Charanji. First, unmute yourself. Yeah. Yeah, please.
Tang saranang kacchami, dhammang saranang kacchami, sanghang saranang kacchami. Om Diyo Shanti Rantariksha Gung Shanti Prithvi Shanti Rapa Shanti Rokataya Shanti Vanaspataya Shantir Vishve Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvagung Shanti Shanti Reva Shanti Sama Shanti Reti Hari Om. First, I'd like to appreciate all the organizers and all the friends from different parts of the world I've been listening for the last hour and a half to great speakers. The concern is the environment. When we talk about environment on the conceptual, then we talk about the many different ways of looking at it. But when we talk about the nature, then we talk about one unified value, most fundamental values. That is real environment. That means peace. When we come from there and we want to expect that environment to bring us peace, comfort, and happiness, based on conception, is not possible, because everyone have different reality or different level of concept, different level of environment in the brain, in the heart, in the mind. That means consciousness base is different. So when we want to improve the environment, we have to first go beyond conception, beyond the intellect, the ego, and the mind. This is what India and Asian culture is all about. Especially India, Bharat. They claim all the time Bharat is Ved Bhumi, Bharat is Gyan Bhumi, and Bharat is Purva Bhumi. What does that mean? That means that fullness is always there. Total knowledge is always there. Ved, which is nature, or the infinite organizing power in nature, is always there. That's it, the environment we wanted to share to humanity in the world. By researching in consciousness, not in matters, but in consciousness. That means we research in the emptiness. That's where the total environment is. For example, if we put a seed in the ground, the emptiness in the middle of the seed, the talk starting to wake up and talk to each other, communicate, and the seeds expand, sprout. The environment start, and then sprout and become the tree, the branch, the leaf, and the fruit, and at the end become a seed again. So environment from this perspective, where are you talking about? From seed to seed, in between two seed, or from the middle emptiness of the seed? This is the question that we have to look into. India have all this proof that emptiness at the seed, that's where the totality of environment, that's where the word knowledge or Veda is. From that perspective, Veda is not a book or understanding anymore. It's beyond, it's unmanifest. So when we talk about Veda or knowledge or environment in this perspective of conception, there's no solution. There's no solution. We're only dreaming. Why we are dreaming? Because we are in a different yuga. As we know, when the nature or the Sanatana Dharma, today we known as the constitution of the universe or the laws of nature. When that laws of nature is fully lit, fully vibrate, then we're in the Satyuga or complete knowledge. And when that is reduced to 75%, we are in a different yuga, Trayadara yuga, 50, Dwapada. And if that law of nature comes with 25%, and in the Kali yuga, this is where we are. So when we are seeing the light only 25%, what can we claim 100% light? It's not possible. We see the rope and we mistake it as a snake. So we have to re-see, rethink by developing or expand the nature of consciousness within us. All these great scholars, great social welfare, they have good meanings, but so far they don't have that complete solution because they don't see the cause of problem. They only see problems. The cause of problem is you only see the rope and you mistake it's a snake. And that's just the ignorance of education, of the mind, of today's world. I'm sorry I'm going so straight and so strong, but I want this great scholar in this meeting to see from a different perspective. I learned this from my Guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He gave me a program. You research in your own nature, your own consciousness. You go to where the sun is, and you understand the first light, first ray of the sun, and you see how that ray of the sun come out, how it talk to each other. This is what Vedic science of Veda of India have. How the memory is called Smriti wakes up, and then the sound came out called Shruti. In that Puran, in that word, before time and space. And this is how the whole environment came out. When the environment came out with all the literature, poetry, but who sees the totality? That's the point.
Excuse me, may I intervene? I'm really sorry to intervene. In order to follow our time schedule, me and Ajit Ma, may we request you to please sum up. So, Professor Akhtarul Wasi is also there to speak and share his views. Please.
It's fine. I've just concluded now, and I thank you for all the time. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot, sir. And I'm really sorry to intervene. Could we now invite Professor Akhtarul Wasi sahab?
बहुत शुक्रिया। मैं सबसे पहले माई अजीत कौर का, साहित्य एकेडमी का शुक्रगुजार हूं कि उन्होंने ऐसे अहम मौजू पर बात करने के लिए हम सबको यहाँ जमा किया। आज का जो विषय है और जो मौजू है वो बुनियादी तौर पे इस बात का सबूत है कि हम किस कठिन दौर से गुजर रहे हैं। हमें ये समझना चाहिए कि माई अजीत कौर जो बरसों से इस काम में लगी हुई हैं, एक जागृति पैदा करने में लगी हुई हैं, और हम उनकी जो चिंता है वो हमारी चिंता को अपनी चिंता बना के एक चिंतन के जरिए चेतना में बदलना चाहती हैं। इसके लिए हम सबकी तरफ से उनके आभारी हैं, उनका शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं। साहित्य एकेडमी भी इस काम में बराबर से मदद दे रही है, उसके लिए हम उनके भी शुक्रगुजार हैं। देखिए, या तो ऐसा है कि इस दुनिया में हम साथ जिएंगे या साथ डूबेंगे, एक चीज तरह से हमें समझ लेना चाहिए। अगर हमने वातावरण की या पर्यावरण की या एनवायरनमेंट की, जो भी नाम उसे आप दें, उसके लिए कोई चिंता नहीं की, हमें ये नहीं भूलना चाहिए कि बुनियादी तौर पे जो इस वक्त सूरत हाल है वो हमारी अपनी पैदा की हुई है, किसी और की नहीं है। कुरान में एक बात कही गई है, बहुत अच्छे संदर्भ में कही गई है, बड़ी चिंता के अंदाज में कही गई है, और वो क्या है? वो ये है कि जमीन और आसमान, जमीन और तरी में यानी समंदर में फिसाद फैल गया है, और ये सब इंसानों के करतूतों की वजह से। तो यही एक बात है जिसे हमें समझना चाहिए। हमारी जो प्रॉब्लम है वो ये है कि हम अपने वक्ती फायदे के लिए जो दूरगामी परिणाम हो सकते हैं, हमारी गलत पॉलिसियों का, उसके बारे में हम नहीं सोच रहे हैं। हम दरियाओं का, जंगलों का, पहाड़ों का जो महत्व है उसको जानते बूझते भी हम मानने को, समझने को और उसे बचाने के लिए तैयार नहीं है। एक यही चिंता है जिसको के हमारे यहाँ जो एक्टिविस्ट हैं वो भी कर रहे हैं, और जो हमारे यहाँ शायर हैं, अदीब हैं, लिखने वाले हैं, सोचने वाले हैं, वो भी सोच रहे हैं। और उसका सबसे बड़ा उदाहरण जैसे मैंने दिया शुरू में, माई अजीत कौर मौजूद हैं, वो कर रही हैं। आज जो हालत है वो क्या है, आज हम सीमेंट के जंगल बनाए जा रहे हैं। सीमेंट के जंगलों के बनाने की सूरत में क्या हो रहा है कि बढ़ती हुई आबादी का प्रकोप जो है वो हमें एक तरह से फ्लैट नामी घोंसलों में सीमित कर देने में लगा हुआ है। और फ्लैटों की हालत क्या है, एक शायर ने इसको इसी बात से कहा कि मेरे घर में धूप खुशी की आए भला तो कैसे आए, मेरे घर का आंगन छोटा दर नीचे दीवार बुलंद। ये एक समस्या है जिसे हमें समझना चाहिए। जब हम घने जंगल बना लेते हैं सीमेंट के, स्टील के, तो नतीजा ये होता है कि जमीन की कोख में हम एक तरह से लोहा उतार देते हैं। लोहा उतार के उसे बांझ कर देते हैं। उसकी शक्ति जो है उसको बुनियादी तौर पे उसका दुरुपयोग करते हैं। और नतीजा क्या होता है कि उस सीमेंट के जंगल में के नतीजे में हरियाली जाती है, पेड़ जाते हैं, हरियाली और पेड़ जाते हैं, तो फिर हम जो चिड़ियों की चहचहाहट है उससे महरूम हो जाते हैं। जो हमारा एक दूर तक देखने का विजन है उससे महरूम हो जाते हैं। और ये तमाम चीजें जो हैं मानवता के लिए एक घातक हैं, इसको हमें समझना चाहिए। मैं एक दफा फिर माई अजीत कौर को मुबारकबाद देता हूं और दुआ करता हूं और उम्मीद करता हूं इस दुआ में हम सब शामिल होंगे कि अल्लाह उनको लंबी उम्र दे सेहत के साथ, और वो इसी तरह सक्रिय रहें, हमारा मार्गदर्शन करती रहें, और साहित्य एकेडमी जो है इसी तरह से सहयोग और समर्थन करती रहे उस एजेंडे का जो फौसवाल देख रहा है। मैं साहित्य एकेडमी के लोगों को भी का भी शुक्रिया अदा करता हूं एक बार फिर कि उन्होंने इस तरह का एक आयोजन एक दफा फिर किया। ये ऑफलाइन ही, ऑनलाइन ही सही, लेकिन बहरहाल ऐसा है कि जिस तरह की समस्या है उस पर हम खामोश नहीं रह सकते। हम हाथ पे हाथ धरे नहीं बैठ सकते। हमें कहीं जहां पर भी रहें इस काम के लिए एक नई बेदारी, एक नई जागृति, एक नई चेतना पैदा करने के लिए काम करता रहना चाहिए। और ये काम आज के जमाने में अगर सबसे ज्यादा कोई कर सकता है तो वो हमारे कलमकार कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि कलमकार जो हैं वो अपने चिंतन से हमारी जो चिंता है उसको चेतना में भी बदलेंगे और साथ में समाज के अंदर एक ऐसा परिवर्तन लाएंगे सकारात्मक सोच की बुनियाद पे, जिसके नतीजे में कि इंसान अपने आप को खुदकुशी करने से बचाएगा और दुनिया के अंदर एनवायरनमेंट जो है, वातावरण जो है, पर्यावरण जो है उसकी सुरक्षा करेगा। याद रखिए, अगर पर्यावरण सही रहेगा तो हम भी सही रहेंगे, और अगर पर्यावरण सही नहीं रहेगा तो हम भी सही नहीं रहेंगे। हमें कोई बचाने वाला नहीं होगा सिवाय इसके कि हम खुद ही एक सचेत हों, एक तरह से बेदार हों और आगे बढ़ के इस काम को हम संभाल लें। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया साहब। Ajitma, I'm not sure if Anand Kumar ji is there. So should I thank? Because this is. I request now Anand Kumar ji Because of that earlier technical problem, we are yet to get proper connection. So if not in this session, we will have it in next of our session. You need not worry at all. We will play it.
Very important. She is Mahatma Gandhi's granddaughter.
Yeah, it will be there. But because of that technical problem occurred, we will play it in the next of our sessions. Anand Kumarji.
So, thank you very much. Dear friends, welcome to you all at this online literature conference on environment and literature under the aegis of Foundation of SAARC Writers and Literature Postwall and BIMSTEC countries, the Sahitya Academy, Ministry of Culture, Government of India. This 61st conference is of special significance as it falls in the 75th year of Indian independence being celebrated as Azadi Ka Mahotsav. I thank Ajit Kaurji, founder president of FOSWAL and the patron saint of these conferences to create goodwill among countries through their poets and writers. I thank our chief guest, Professor Chandrasekhar Kambarji, who unfortunately could not be here, the president of Sahitya Academy, and our chief collaborator. Thanks are due to Professor Madhav Kaushikji and Dr. K. Srinivasa Raoji, the vice presidents and secretary of Sahitya Academy, respectively. Without the support of Sahitya Academy, this conference was impossible in this era of pandemic. We are honored by the august presence of Sri Ashish Nandiji, Tara Gandhi Bhattacharya, who will appear a bit later, Sri N.K. Goel, Sri K.J. Alfonso, Sri Gauhar Rizvi. Sri Gauhar Rizvi ji could not be present here, Sri Manzoor Islamji, Srimati Kunzang Choden, Professor Abhi Subedi, Reverend Buddha Charanji, and Professor Akhtarul Wasi. I welcome and thank all chairpersons, speakers, poets, young and old, for agreeing to participate and share their feelings. They come from SAARC and BIMSTEC countries, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar. I thank Arpana Kaurji, the famous international artist and a constant support to FOSWAL morally and financially. She is the spirit behind her illustrious mother, Ajit ji. Last but not least, I thank Sri R.K. Sethi and Sri Praveen Kumar in the FOSWAL Secretariat for all the labor and details that went behind this event. Madams and sirs, we are indeed honored by your presence and participation. May peace reign on all life and matter in the universe. Thank you all. Thank you.
The inaugural session ends here. Thank you all.